Breaking news out of Washington. Congress has just passed a game-changing immigration reform that could redefine life in America for millions of immigrants. President Donald Trump is back in the White House, and in a shocking twist, both Republicans and Democrats have joined forces on a bipartisan deal unlike anything we've seen before. This isn't politics as usual. This is a turning point in United States immigration policy, and the consequences will be felt for decades. The announcement dropped today, and the impact is immediate. At the heart of this reform is a bold new reclassification. For the first time, anyone who isn't a United States citizen will now be labeled simply as a non-citizen. That means green card holders, international students, workers, and visa holders all fall into one broad category. Overnight, decades of legal distinctions and protections that separated these groups have been erased. It's an unprecedented move that has immigration experts, advocacy groups, and millions of families scrambling to understand what this means for their future. For years, a green card symbolized security, a permanent status that offered stability, work rights, and a pathway to citizenship. That sense of permanence has now been shattered. Under this new law, permanent residents are no longer insulated from the kinds of strict rules normally applied to temporary visa holders. Instead, they are subject to tighter scrutiny, with their residency at risk from even a single misstep. The sharpest shift centers on one issue: driving under the influence. A DUI conviction, once considered a state-level misdemeanor in many places, is now elevated to a federal trigger for deportation. Immigration judges previously had discretion, weighing the seriousness of an offense against family ties, community contributions, and years of residence. That discretion is now severely limited. A single DUI, even without injury or repeat offenses, can start automatic deportation proceedings for non-citizens, including green card holders. And it doesn't stop there. The law states that even admitting to a DUI without a conviction can be enough to be deemed inadmissible. Imagine answering a question during a visa interview or a renewal process and acknowledging a past mistake. That honest admission could now result in permanent exclusion from the United States. This is one of the most dramatic tightening of immigration enforcement seen in decades. The policy doesn't just apply to DUIs. Other offenses like simple assault or theft, which some states classify as minor, can now meet the federal threshold for removal. In practice, that means thousands of immigrants who once felt protected under older standards now face uncertainty. The message from Congress is clear. Non-citizens must meet a higher bar of compliance or risk losing everything. Why now? Lawmakers argue this is about public safety. Supporters of the reform say the United States must prioritize citizens first, and that risky behavior like drunk driving threatens American lives. President Trump has long campaigned on a tough stance toward immigration, and this law fits squarely into that agenda. Yet what's truly surprising is the bipartisan nature of the deal. Democrats and Republicans have often clashed over immigration, but here they've presented a united front. Critics, however, call this a dangerous precedent. Immigration scholars warn that erasing the distinctions between permanent residents, visa holders, and undocumented immigrants is more than just semantics. It changes how millions of people are viewed under the law. Green card holders who once saw themselves as part of the American fabric now face the same vulnerabilities as temporary visitors. This could reshape immigrant communities across the country. Another key element buried within the reform is the new standard for good moral character. This phrase has always mattered in citizenship applications, but it now carries sharper teeth. A DUI is no longer a blemish that can be explained away. It's a disqualifier. Non-citizens convicted of driving under the influence cannot establish good moral character, effectively shutting the door on citizenship applications. This doubles the impact. Not only can one mistake result in deportation, it can also permanently block the path to naturalization. The reform has ignited strong reactions. Immigration lawyers are calling it unprecedented. Community leaders warn it will create fear among non-citizens, discouraging them from reporting crimes or interacting with local authorities. Some state officials worry it could undermine public safety because entire groups may retreat from cooperation with law enforcement. Yet supporters of the law argue the opposite, that it creates accountability, deters risky behavior, and reinforces the rule of law. Internationally, the move could have ripple effects. Countries with strong migration ties to the United States, from Mexico to India to China, will be watching closely. Millions of their citizens who hold visas, work permits, or permanent residency are now navigating stricter rules. Diplomats may face pressure from their governments to raise these concerns with Washington. And globally, the message is unambiguous. The United States is redrawing the line between citizens and non-citizens in the harshest possible terms. The stakes could not be higher. For immigrant families who have lived in America for decades, invested in communities, and paid taxes, the risk of deportation over a single mistake is devastating. For policymakers, the reform is framed as balancing opportunity with safety. And for the political landscape, this law signals that immigration will remain one of the defining battlegrounds of the Trump presidency. What comes next? Implementation will be key. Federal agencies must now rewrite their guidelines, retrain officers, and enforce these new rules nationwide. Immigration courts, already overloaded, will see a surge in new cases triggered by lower thresholds for removal. Attorneys expect challenges in the federal courts, where questions about due process and equal protection will be hotly contested. Yet for now, the law is the law. All eyes are now on how aggressively enforcement will begin. The next 48 hours could see the Department of Homeland Security roll out its first wave of directives. If so, immigrants with even a past DUI on record may find themselves at immediate risk. Communities across the country are bracing for what could be the most far-reaching immigration crackdown in recent memory. This is a historic moment in U.S. politics. For non-citizens, the margin for error has narrowed to nearly zero. For green card holders, the sense of security has been upended, and for the United States, the message to the world is that citizenship is the only true shield. Stay tuned, because this story is far from over. More legal challenges, more political debates, and more personal stories will emerge as this reform takes effect. Here at Legal Lens USA, we'll keep cutting through the noise to bring you the facts that matter. If you found this breakdown helpful, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Share this video with your community because the stakes are simply too high to ignore.